Okay, let's get back into this, guys. I think we're up to here. We just read that paragraph. So we're up to here. See the previous one. This is not only anti-Cartesianism. Let's see, what were they talking about? We didn't even finish that paragraph. More and more gay, wanting to show that he is right, Spinoza analyzes the example of Adam in his own way. In the conditions in which we live, we seem absolutely condemned to have only one sort of idea, affection ideas, by which of what miracle could one move away from these actions of bodies that do not wait for us in order to exist? How could one rise to a knowledge, connaissance of causes, for the moment we see clearly that all that is given to us is ideas of affection, ideas of mixture? For the moment we see clearly that since birth we have been condemned to chance encounters, so things aren't going well. What does this imply? I mean, I disagree with that, right? I don't think we're condemned to chance encounters. I think that's part of this lower surface virus and gang stalking, which is basically dissonance and static, and a surface virus, a cross current to the flow of forward consciousness. Anyway, so I don't know if I agree with him. Maybe I don't understand what he's trying to say, but I think I do. Anyway, for the moment we see it already implies a fanatical reaction against Descartes. That would be René Descartes, the all-famous, since Spinoza will affirm strongly in Book 2 that we can only know conoscere ourselves, and we can only know external bodies by the affections that the external bodies produce on our own. Again, I disagree, because when we're on psychedelics, this is where we do see inside the thing and not just the affections that it externally produces, on us, that the external bodies produce on our own. And that's why psychedeliate with natural fungi and plant hallucinogens, because you get to see inside the thing and it's etological. It turns something inside out, and so that's what, you get to notions and essence. For those who can recall a little Descartes, this is the basic anti-Cartesian proposition, since it excludes every apprehension of the thinking thing by itself. Since it excludes every apprehension of the thinking thing by itself. Right. So that is, it excludes all possibility of the cogito. I don't know what that is. Cogito. Are they talking about cognition? No. Anyway, I'll take a moment to thank Peter. So we're moving into... So what I'm going to do is, for your prize wheels, one of your last ones, because I still have to do your two big prize wheels. It's like 20 videos. There was like 10 in each, where you donated like $200, something over $200 each time. I'm always pretty much just going to cap the wheel spins at 10, because otherwise it's just too many videos, too much on my plate. Yeah, so we're basically going to replace a few of those, the lesser videos, with reading this, because this is going to take a while. We're only on page 7. So I hope you're happy with that, Peter. I suspect you will, because this is so high quality compared to even a $30 Bandit video, which are, for me, the highest quality thing on the prize wheel spin besides a live or a full health consultation. So maybe I'll take away the health consultation that you got for one of them and do this instead, that type of thing. Anyway, let's continue. Alright, where were we? Yeah, this is crazy. For those who can recall a little Descartes, this is the basic anti-Cartesian proposition since it excludes every apprehension of the thinking thing by itself. That is, it excludes all possibility of the cogito. I'm not sure what that is. I only ever know the mixtures of bodies, and I only know myself by way of the action of other bodies on me, and by way of mixtures. Yeah, but in my opinion, that's still this third dimensional view, so I can see why everyone was calling him materialist. I get it. I get why they were seeing him like that. But like she, or the author here, was saying, there was more to the story, actually. He was just trying to put, I think, forth something for the organic portals, because that's what you have to do, right? When we make a model for these people in this universe, our spirited humans, we come down here, we heal them, and we uplift their whole fucking system. When we make models for them, like Descartes and his calculus, and this guy and this idea, Affectus Affectio thing, we've got to try and densify it as dense and material as we can. It's got to be as simple as it can become as well. That's why it's always worked out like this, like really go through every little aspect of it, like when it's done properly like this. And I hope I can get there, because it's difficult. Anyway, I do consider myself one of these great men from history. And it's the end of history, so I may be the last. Anyway, whatever. I don't care if you think I'm tooting my own horn. I don't think I'm being arrogant at all. Because the stuff about the essence, the visual stuff, this is all next level. You see, he's still riding on their level. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I definitely think he had more to him than that, like she was saying, this author. This is not only anti-Cartesian, but also anti-Christianity. And why? Because one of the fundamental points of theology is the immediate perfection of the first created man, which is what called in theology the theory of Adamic perfection. Before he sinned, Adam was created as perfect as he could be, so then the story of his sin is precisely the story of the fall. But the fall presupposes an Adam who is perfect insofar as he is a created thing. Anyway, Spinoza finds this idea very amusing. His idea is that this isn't possible. Supposing that one is given the idea of a first man, one can only be given this idea as that of the most powerless being. The most imperfected there could be, since the first man can only exist in chance encounters and in the action of other bodies on his own. Okay. Yeah, I think I see what he's saying there. Well, it makes sense in the theory of concrescence, guys. I always go on about, I'm not going to go into it now, because I've mentioned it a million times. Thus, in supposing that Adam exists, he exists in a mode of absolute imperfection and inadequacy. Yeah, I see what he's saying, right? He exists in the mode of a little baby, who is given over to chance encounters. Unless he is a protected milieu, hyphenated, but I've said too much. What would that be, a protected milieu? Evil is a bad encounter, which means what? Spinoza, in his correspondence with the Dutchman, tells him, "You always relate to me the example of God who forbade Adam from eating the apple. And you cite this as the example of moral law. The first prohibition," Spinoza tells him, "but this is not all what happens." And Spinoza relates the entire story of Adam in the form of poisoning and an intoxication. What happened in reality? God never forbade whatever it might be to Adam. He granted him a revelation. Adam foresaw the noxious effect that the body of the apple would have on the constitution of his own body. In other words, the apple is a poison for Adam. The body of the apple exists under such a characteristic relation, such is its constitution, that it can only act on Adam's body by decomposing the relation of Adam's body. And if he was wrong to not to listen to God, this is not in the sense that he disobeyed in this matter, but that he didn't comprehend anything. This situation also exists amongst animals, and this is the NPC state, everybody. This is what we've been talking about. The Scots used to call it Hylix, and it's like a retardation state. The situation also exists among animals, certain of which have an instinct that turns them away from what is poisonous to them. But there are others which don't have this instinct, which I have an encounter such that the relation of the body which modifies me, which acts on me, is combined with my own relation. With the characteristic relation of my own body, what happens? I would say that my power of acting is increased, at least it is increased with regard to this particular relation. When, on the contrary, I have an encounter such that the characteristic relation of the body which modifies me compromises or destroys one of my relations, or my characteristic relation, I would say that my power of acting is diminished or even destroyed. We discover here our two fundamental effects or affectus. Now, this whole destruction thing they keep talking about, I noticed this as part of ego destruction in gang stalking novelty complexes, which we talked about on the live stream, the gang stalking live stream, I'm pretty sure it was. Okay, where are we up to? We rediscover here our two fundamental effects, or affectus, sadness and joy. To recapitulate everything at this level as a function of ideas of affection, which I have, there are two sorts of ideas of affection. The idea of an effect, which benefits or favors my own characteristic relation, and second, the idea of effect, which compromises or destroys my own characteristic relation. Yes, we already that was recapitulation. Okay, to these two types of ideas of affection will correspond the two movements of variation in the affectus. The two poles of variation. In one case, my power of acting is increased and... Sorry, dropped the phone. Sorry about that. In one case, my power of acting is increased and I undergo eprouve, an affectus of joy. And in the other case, my power of acting is diminished and I undergo an affectus of sadness. Yeah, and many more things. Anyway, so Spinoza will engender all the passions in the details on the basis of these two fundamental effects. Joy and an increase of power of acting, sadness as a diminution of or destruction of the power of acting. This comes down to say that each thing, body or soul, is defined by a certain characteristic complex relation. But I will also say that each thing, body or soul, is defined by a certain power of being affected. Everything happens as if each one of us had a certain power of being affected. Okay. If you consider beasts, Spinoza will be firm in telling us that what counts among animals is not at all the genera or species. Genera and species are absolutely confused notions, abstract ideas. That's interesting. What counts is the question of what is a body capable, and thereby he sets out one of the most fundamental questions in his whole philosophy. Before him there had been Hobbes and others, by saying that the only question is that we don't even know, savants, what a body is capable of. We prattle on about the soul and the mind, and we don't know what a body can do. But a body must be defined by the ensembles the ensemble of relations which compose it, or what amounts to exactly the same thing by its power of being affected. As long as you don't know what power a body has to be affected, as long as you learn like that in chance encounters, you will not have the wise life. You will not have wisdom. So, you need to know what power a body has to be affected. They're saying, knowing what you are capable of, this is not at all a moral question. I don't know about this. I would shy away from this because I would see it as limiting, and I would just live the moment and feel like I would just do without thinking. Have you ever noticed that that's when you catch the fly, and that's when you're ready, my son? When you don't think, you just bam, got the fly, right? Or you can move really slowly and catch the fly. I'm aware of that, but you get the whole thing I'm trying to say. Notwithstanding that, right? I mean, withstanding that, sorry. Knowing what you're capable of, this is not at all a moral question, but above all a physical question. And that's why I shy away from this, because I'd say it's not a physical question, because we have the examples of chi, energy, and monks putting spears to their neck, you know what I mean? As a question to the body and soul, a body has something fundamentally hidden. We could speak of the human species, the human genera, but this won't tell us what is capable of affecting our body, what is capable of destroying it. The only question is the power of being affected. What distinguishes a frog from an ape? It's not the specific or generic characteristics. Spinoza says rather it's the fact they are not capable of the same affections. Damn, this would be a really good way for me to figure out how the translation between the sixth and the third dimension, right? How a physical object comes out of a six-dimensional geometrical archetypical grid of existence, an infinite design template. Do you see what I'm saying? This is good. This is really good. So what I'm saying is that the affection, or how it's capable of being affected, would lead us to up-dimensional knowledge. This is fucking dangerous. This is like me giving it to the AI, you know what I mean, of the surface virus. Because it's trying to go up-dimensional. You know, it's trying to, not just mimic God, but become it, right? It's trying to go back up. Not just it's falling. It's trying to work its way up dimensionally because then it has more power from above. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that fully now. Anyway, thus it will be necessary to make for each animal veritable charts of effects. Yes, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I was just thinking. The effects of which a beast is capable. Well, not that so much, but that fits into it. But how it's affected and what can affect it. And that this, I'm not even saying it properly, but this, I need to figure out the translation, you know what I mean? Between the dimensions. And likewise for men, the effects of which man is capable, we should notice at, like, what affects something is what I was saying, you know? We should notice at this moment that depending on the culture and then how it gets the higher dimensional energy, I'm sorry, I'm noting this to myself if I listen to this in the future. We should notice at this moment that depending on the culture, depending on the society, men are not all capable of the same effects. It's well known that one method by which certain governments exterminated the Indians of South America was to have left on trails the Indians travelled clothing from influenza victims. Clothing gathered in the infirmaries because the Indians couldn't stand the effect. Influenza. No need even of machine guns. They dropped like flies. It's the same with us in the conditions of forest, like we risk not living very long. Thus the human genera, species, or even race hasn't any importance. Spinoza will say, as long as you haven't made the list of effects of which someone is capable, in the stronger sense of the word capable, compromising the maladies of which he, she is capable as well. It's obvious that the racehorse and the draft horse are the same species, two varieties of the same species, yet their effects are very different. Their maladies are absolutely different. Their capacities are being affected and are completely different. And from this point of view, we must say that a draft horse is closer to an ox than to a racehorse. Thus an ethological chart of effects is quite different from a generic or specific determination of animals. Wow, an ethological chart of effects. Oh man, that is world changing. Where is science on all this stuff, you know? It's clearly, you know, science is just so organic portal, and they're just filled with them. It's like all scientists probably are them. You know, it's like automator people, and then they don't consider this stuff, you know. Like all these spiritual, this is a spiritual reading because we're reading about ideas. Everybody understands that, right? This is a spiritual reading, even though it's not like purported as one. It obviously is one. I hold this in the same regard as Walter Russell's The Secret of Light, or, I don't know, all the yogi texts and stuff, you know. You see that the power of being affected or the Bible, you know, you see that the power of being affected can be fulfilled in two ways. When I am poisoned, my power of being affected is absolutely fulfilled. Yeah, but it's fulfilled in such a way that my power of acting tends towards zero. Yeah, so the power of being affected is fulfilled, but it's in the wrong way, so to speak. Yeah, which is to say, it's inhibited. Inversely, when inverse. Okay, equally fulfilled, and my power of acting increases and tends towards what? In the case of a bad encounter, all my force of existing, vis existendi, is concentrated, tending toward the following goal: to invest the trace of the body which affected me in order to reject the effect of this body. So much so that my power of acting is diminished accordingly. Yeah. There are very concrete things. You have a headache and you say, I can't even read anymore. I'm actually kind of getting one now. This means that your force of existing invests the trace of the migraine so fully. It implies changes in one of your subordinate relations. It invests the trace of your migraine so fully that your power of acting is diminished accordingly. This is like a distraction. On the contrary, when you say, I feel really good, and you are content, you are also content because bodies are mixed with you in proportions and under conditions which are favorable to your relation or the continuation of creation, I guess. At that moment, the power of the body which affects you is combined with your own in such a way that your power of acting is increased. So like eating superfood instead of, I don't know, bad food. So although in the two cases your power of being affected will be completely actualized, affectue, it can be actualized in such a way that the power of acting diminishes to infinity, or alternatively, the power of acting increases to infinity. You'd have to be continually going up, though. To infinity, is this true? Evidently not. Yeah. since at our level the forces of existing, the powers of being affected, and the powers, so the pervers and the persenses, so the nuisances and perverse. I need to figure out those words because they've put that after the word power, but it looks like a positive and negative sense. Of being affected, and powers, persenses of acting are inevitably finite. And I would say that just the distraction or the negative keeps coming, you know. Only God has an absolutely infinite power, puissance, right? But within certain limits I will not cease to pass via these variations of the power of acting as a function of the ideas I have. I will not cease to follow the line of continuous variation of the affectus as a function of affection ideas that I have, and the encounters that I have. Sorry. 1 minute, I'm just gonna have a drink. Just had Jesus's blood. Know what I mean? Bit of wine. Alright. Let's get back into this. Alright. Goes absolute power. Right, but within certain limits I will not cease to pass via these variations of the power of acting as a function of the ideas I have. I will not cease to follow the line of continuous variation of the affectus as a function of affection ideas that I have and the encounters that I have, in such a way that at each instant my power of being affected is completely actualized, completely fulfilled. Fulfilled simply in the mode of sadness or the mode of joy. Of course, also both at once, since it's well understood that in the sub-relations which compose us, a part of ourselves can be composed of sadness and another part of ourselves can be composed of joy. There are local sadnesses and local joys. For example, Spinoza gives the following definition of tickling. A local joy, this does not mean that everything is joy in the tickling. It can be a joy of a nature that implies a coexistent irritation of another nature, an irritation which is sadness. My power of being affected tends to be exceeded, depasse. Nothing that exceeds his/her power of being affected is good for a person. Nothing that exceeds his/her power of being affected is good for a person. Are you guys thinking of the same word that I'm thinking of right now? The E word, enlightenment. And it's almost like you are pushed, consistently, but not constantly, to your buffer. It's like God or the transcendental object or whatever it is pushes you, but just enough, or as far as you can go, but no further, sort of thing. It knows your parameters. You know what I mean? A power of being affected is really an intensity or threshold of intensity. Yeah, and so I really consider that, when we take psychedelics, we're increasing our power of being able to, our capability of affection, of being affected, that is, sorry. So when we take psychedelics, we're able to be affected greater. Our parameters increase, so to speak. The intensity can be more. Because that's what I've noticed when I've taken psychedelics, after. In my adulthood now, I have a greater ability to be affected, and I can handle more. So it's a more open state and basically a stronger state. So what were they saying here earlier? My power of being affected. Yeah. Anyway, right. What Spinoza really wants to do is to define the essence of someone in an intensive fashion as an intensive quantity. As long as you don't know your intent, I was just saying this, thinking about psychedelics, what I just said. As long as you don't know your intensities, and psychedelics teach you that, you risk the bad encounter and you will have to say it's beautiful, both the excess and the immoderation. No immoderation at all. There's only failure, nothing other than failure. Advice for overdoses. This is funny that I was just talking about psychedelics. Interesting. This is precisely the phenomenon of the power of being affected, which is exceeded in a total destruction. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is the psychedelics, not an overdose obviously, but a good dose where you capture the thing, you cross the threshold, you're in the trip, you don't have to scratch at it from the outside, but you're actually inside of it. So you have, it's still under LD50 all the time. It seems to me, on some drugs it may be slightly over though. But on these plant fungi hallucinogens, it's like, a pound of psilocybe cubensis, the gold top white coproficious dung loving mushroom that I always go on about, and Terence McKenna talked about a lot. It seems that the LD50 is 1 pound, but you're only ever taking grams. You're not taking 2 pound or a pound of it. It's ridiculous. Nobody's going to sit there and eat a pound of it. Anyway, so eating a pound would cause the total destruction, and it would be the exceeded state. Certainly in my generation, on average, we were much more cultured or trained in philosophy when we used to do it, and on the other hand, we had a very striking kind of lack of culture in other domains, in music, painting, cinema. I have the impression that for many among you, the relation has changed. That is to say that you know absolutely nothing in philosophy, and or rather you have a concrete grasp of things like a colour. You know what a sound is or what an image is. A philosophy is a kind of synthesizer of concepts. Creating a concept is not at all ideological. A concept is a created thing. A philosophy is a kind of synthesizer of concepts. Creating a concept is not at all ideological. Yeah, I get it. Nice. A concept is a created thing. What I've defined up to now is solely the increase and diminution of the power of acting, and whether the power of acting increases or diminishes, the corresponding affectus is always a passion. Whether it be a joy which increases my power of acting or a sadness which diminishes my power of acting, in both cases they are passions, joyful passions or sad passions. Yet again, Spinoza denounces a plot in the universe of those who are interested in affecting us with sad passions. The priest has need of the sadness of his subjects. He needs these subjects to feel themselves guilty. The auto affections or active effects assume that we possess our power of acting, and that on such and such a point we have left the domain of the passions in order to enter the domain of actions. The auto affections or active effects assume that we possess our power of acting, and that on such and such a point we have left the domain of passions in order to enter the domain of actions. This is what remains for us to see. The order of affections or active effects. Okay. How we leave behind affection ideas, how could we leave behind passive effects, which consist in increase or diminution of our power of acting? How could we leave behind the world of inadequate ideas? Once we're told that our condition seems to condemn us strictly to this world, on that score we must read the ethics as preparing a kind of dramatic turn. It's going to speak to us of active effects where there are no longer passions, where the power of acting is conquered instead of passing by all those continuous variations. Here, there's a very strict point. There's a fundamental difference between ethics and morality. Spinoza doesn't make up a morality for a very simple reason. He never asks what we must do. He always asks what we are capable of. See, Immanuel Kant used to say, if you're capable of it, then you should do it. That was Kant's ethic philosophy, right? Immanuel Kant. Anyway, he never asks what we must do. He always asks what we are capable of, what is in our power. Ethics is a problem of power, never a problem of duty. So he's exactly the opposite of Immanuel Kant. Are you reading this? Because he's saying, ethics is a problem of power, not of duty. Isn't that opposite to Kant and the stuff he was talking about, from what I read? Anyway, comment below if I'm wrong or you want to correct me. In this sense, Spinoza is profoundly immoral. Regarding the moral problem, good and evil, he has a happy nature because he doesn't even comprehend what this means. What he comprehends are good encounters, bad encounters, increases and diminutions of power. Thus he makes an ethics and not at all a morality. This is why he so struck Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche. This is like a mishmash of all the great philosophers in here, eh? This is good. Interesting. So, thus he makes an ethics and not at all a morality. This is why he so struck Nietzsche. I have not read Nietzsche, so I don't know really what they're referring to totally there. I've read some of Nietzsche's quotes, but that's about it. Yeah, that's very interesting. So actually I've come to this myself in the last 1 or 2 years of 3 years of my life. Basically I look at the world like Spinoza is looking at it now, and I used to be different. I started off conscious as in a Kantian ethic or morality. But, Kant called it ethics. It's called Immanuel Kant ethics. I had the capability, the consciousness to create the website, and I had the vision and all that. So I did it. And I didn't see it as a increase or diminution of power. However, these days I am quite focused on increase and diminutions of power in the context of all this conscious zening. And I see it that way for sustainability, not just an ego, a mammon, greed, ego aggregation or accretion, or a power insanity or something. I'm seeing it in the way neutrally, in a manner of creation. Exactly like Spinoza, I have a feeling views it. the power of acting, right? If, for instance, just simplify this. If I'm poor, I can't create as good stuff, right? I may have great ideas, but I can't push them as far. I can't afford the marketing channel or this or that, or maybe not even the internet, you know what I mean? So just to put it in layman's terms there. We are completely enclosed in this world of affection ideas, and these affective continuous variations of joy and sadness. So sometimes my power of acting increases, okay, sometimes it diminishes, but whether it increases or diminishes, I remain within passion because in both cases, I do not possess it. I'm still separated from my power of acting. So when my power of acting increases, it means that I am then relatively less separated, and inversely, but I am still formally separated from my power of acting, I do not possess it in the negative sense. So I'm separate from, but I am still formally separated from my power of acting. I do not possess it. In other words, I'm not the cause of my own effects. And since I'm not the cause of my own effects, they are produced in me by something else. I am therefore passive. I'm in the world of passion. But there are notion ideas and essence ideas. Already at the level of notion ideas, a kind of escape from this world is going to appear. Yeah. This is going to be interesting for me to relate these two higher ideas, the notion and the essence ideas, to dimensionality. Because right now, and this is a guessing, I'm guessing maybe essence ideas is out system thought. So this would be out of the 12th dimensional model. But I don't know, it could just be that it's above the 6th dimension or something like this, or above the 10th. This may be very confusing for you. This is kind of a note to myself and anyone who can understand it. Already at the level of notion ideas, a kind of escape from this world is going to appear. One is completely smothered, enclosed in a world of absolute impotence. Even when my power of acting increases, it's on a segment of variation. Nothing guarantees me that at the street corner I'm not going to receive a great blow to the head and that my power of acting is going to fall again. Indeed. Well, that just went straight to the argument of free will. You recall that an affection idea is a mixture. That is to say, the idea of an effect. I'll say it again. Free will appears to me still to be a delusion of the ego, and those last two paragraphs make headway on how that is. You recall that an affection idea is a mixture, that it is to say the idea of an effect of a body on mine. A notion idea no longer concerns the effect of another body on mine. It's an idea which concerns and which has for its object the agreement or disagreement of the characteristic relations between two bodies. Not the effect, but the characteristics. If there is such an idea, we don't know yet if there is one, but we can always define something even if it means concluding that I can't exist. It's what we will call a nominal definition. By the way, if you don't like me reading, you can always put this on silent and read it to yourself, right? And then come back later and then listen to what I have to say. I would say that the nominal definition of the notion is that it's an idea. I would say that the nominal definition of the notion is that it's an idea which, instead of representing the effect of a body on another, that is to say the mixture of the two bodies, represents the internal agreement or disagreement of the characteristics, of the characteristic relations of the two bodies. Represents the internal agreement or disagreement of the characteristic relations of the two bodies. Instead of the effects. An example, if we knew enough about the characteristic relation of the body named arsenic and the characteristic relation of the human body, I could form a notion of the disagreement of these two relations to the point that the arsenic, under its characteristic relation, destroys the characteristic relation of my body. I am poisoned, I die. You see that the notion differing from the idea of affection, instead of being the seizure of the extrinsic relation of one body with another or the effect of one body on another, the notion is raised to the comprehension of the cause. Yeah, this is getting better. So this is if the mixture has such and such effect. This is by virtue of the nature of relation of the two bodies considered and of the manner in which the relation of one of the bodies is combined with the relation of the other body. There is always a composition of relations. When I am poisoned, the body of arsenic has induced the parts of my body to enter into a relation other than the one which characterizes me. At that moment, the parts of the body enter into a new relation induced by the arsenic, which is perfectly combined with the arsenic. The arsenic is happy since it feeds on me. The arsenic undergoes a joyful passion because, as Spinoza says each body has a soul. Thus, the arsenic is joyful. But me, evidently, I'm not. It has induced the parts of my body to enter into a relation which is combined with its own, the arsenic's. Me, I'm sad, I'm heading toward death. You see that the notion, if one can reach it, is a formidable thing. We are not far from an analytical geometry. A notion is not at all abstract, it's quite concrete. This body here, that body there, if I had the characteristic relation of the soul and of the body of which I say displeases me in relation to my characteristic relation in myself, I would comprehend everything. If I had the characteristic relation of the soul and the body of which I say displeases me in relation to my characteristic relation in myself, I would comprehend everything. I would know by causes instead of knowing only by effects, separated from their causes. At the moment I would have an adequate idea, just as if I understood why someone pleases me, I took as an example digestive relations, but we wouldn't have to change a line for amorous relations. It's not at all that Spinoza conceived love like he conceived digestion. He conceived digestion like love as well. Take a couple, Yala Strindberg. This kind of decomposition of relations, and then they are recombined in order to begin again. What is this continuous variation of affectus, and how does a certain disagreement agree with certain people? Why can certain people live only in a certain indefinitely repeated domestic quarrel? They emerge from it as if it had been a bath of cool water for them. you understand the difference between a notion idea and an affection idea. A notion idea is inevitably adequate since it's a knowledge, a connaissance by causes. Spinoza not only uses the term notion here to qualify this second sort of idea, but he also uses the term common notion. The word is quite ambiguous. Does it mean common to all minds? Yes and no. It's very meticulous in Spinoza. In any case, don't ever confuse a common notion and an abstraction. He always defines a common notion like this. Yeah, I don't confuse those. He always defines a common notion like this. It's the idea of something which is common to all bodies or to several bodies, at least two, and which is common to the whole and to the part. Therefore, there surely, that should be they are. Therefore, they are surely, Therefore, there surely are common notions, and which are common to all minds. But they are common to all minds only to the extent that they are first the idea of something, which is common to all bodies. Therefore, but they are common to all minds only to the extent that they are first the idea of something which is common to all bodies. Therefore, these are not at all abstract notions, what is common to all bodies, for example, being in movement or at rest. Movement and rest will be objects of notions said to be common to all bodies. Therefore, there are common notions which designate something common to all bodies. There are also common notions which designate something common to two bodies or two souls. For example, someone I love. Once again, the common notion is not abstract. It has nothing to do with species or genera. It's actually the statement enoxe of what is common. It's actually the statement of what is common to several bodies or to all bodies. Or since there's no single body which is not itself made up of several, one can say that there are common things or common notions in each body. Hence we fall back upon the question, how can one leave this situation which condemned us to mixtures? Hope nobody's fallen asleep, because that's an important line. How can we escape the matrix? How can we heal the surface virus? That's what that question just asked. Hence we fall back upon the question, how can one leave this situation which condemned us to mixtures? The mixing with organic portal world here, yeah? So I think you should all be concentrating right now. That should have got your attention. Here Spinoza texts are very complicated. Oh God. One can only conceive this departure in the following manner. Broadly speaking, when I'm affected in chance encounters, either I am affected with sadness or with joy. When I'm affected with sadness, my power of acting diminishes, which is to say that I am further separated from this power of acting. When I am affected with joy, it increases, which is to say that I am less separated from the power of acting. Good. If you consider yourself as affected with sadness, I believe that everything is wretched. There is no longer an exit for one simple reason. Nothing is sadness, which diminishes your power of acting, can induce you from within sadness to form a notion common to some. Alright, we're going to have to read that again. I'm already fucking lost. Let's go back. Alright. This is a very important line. If you consider yourself as affected with sadness, so we're taking quite negative views in the organic portal movement, is what I'm thinking. I believe that everything is wretched, right? That we're all on that wave. We hate the organic portals and blah, 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 right? There's no longer an exit. So this is a very interesting sentence. That's why I wanted to reread it. This is in relation, I'm thinking about matrix escape now, or velocity at least. So let's do it again. If you consider yourself as affected with sadness, I believe that everything is wretched. There's no longer an exit for one simple reason. Nothing is sadness, which diminishes your power of acting, can induce you from within sadness to form a notion common to something which would be common to the bodies which affect you with sadness and to your own. From within sadness to form a notion common to something. I really feel this could be better written. I suspect. Maybe I'm just not able to grasp it. Let me go again. There's no longer an exit for one simple reason. Nothing is sadness, which diminishes your power of acting, can induce you from within sadness to form a notion common to something which would be common to the bodies which affect you with sadness and to your own. Nothing is sadness which diminishes your power of acting, can induce you from within sadness, can induce you from within sadness to form a notion common to something which would be common to the bodies which affect you. Induce you from within sadness to form a notion common to something which would be common to the bodies which affect you with sadness. For one very simple reason, that the body which affects you with sadness only affects you with sadness to the extent that it affects you in a relation which does not agree with your own. That the body which affects you with sadness only affects you with sadness to the extent that it affects you in a relation which does not agree with your own. Spinoza means something very simple. The sadness makes no one intelligent. In sadness, one is wretched. It's for this reason that the powers that be need subjects to be sad. Agony has never been, it shuts off reception of higher light and intelligence, Agony has never been a cultural game of intelligence or vivacity. As long as you have a sad effect, a body acts on yours, a soul acts on yours in conditions and in a relation which do not agree with yours. That's a good way to reorchestrate and reiterate positive creation. At that point, nothing is sadness in sadness. At that point, nothing inside sadness can induce you to form the common notion. That is to say, the idea of something in common between two bodies and two souls. Yeah, alright. What he's saying is full of wisdom. Yeah. This is why thinking of death is the most base thing. He is opposed to the whole philosophical tradition, which is a meditation on death. His formula is that philosophy is a meditation on life and not on death. Obviously, because death is always a bad encounter. Well, I don't know about that, because it can lead to, a new door opening, so to speak, and a new creation even on a higher level. So I don't know about that one. I think that needs to be rewritten, to be honest. But there was some good stuff in there. I think I understand some of that. Another case, you are affected with joy. Your power of acting is increased. This doesn't mean that you possess it yet. But the fact that you are affected with joy signifies and indicates the body or soul which affects you, thus affects you in a relation which is combined with your own and which is combined with your own. They just repeat that. And that goes for the formula of love and digestive formula. In an affect of joy, therefore, the body which affects you is indicated as combining its relation with your own, and not as its relation decomposing your own. At that point, something induces you to form a notion of what is common to the body which affects you and to your own body, to the soul, to the soul which affects you and to your own soul. In this sense, joy makes one intelligent. So I'm just thinking about this in the context of Matrix Escape. That's why I'm slow here. Because I'm working in the background as well. There we feel that it's a curious thing. Because geometrical method or not, we grant him everything. He can demonstrate it, but there is an obvious appeal to a kind of lived experience. There's an obvious appeal to way of perceiving, and even more to the way of living. It's necessary to already have such a hatred of passions. The list of sad passions in Spinoza is infinite. He goes so far as to say that every idea of reward envelops a sad passion. Every idea of security envelops a sad passion. Every idea of pride, guilt. It's one of the most marvelous moments in ethics. The effects of joy are like a springboard. They make us pass through something that we would never have been able to pass if there had only been sadness. Whoa, there we go. There we have a Matrix escape sentence. And this would be in the context of velocity via gnosis, right? And you would have to say that must be relative to this light surging through us and the visions. But I have visions when I'm sad also. That does not take away from what's said here, though. He solicits us to form the idea of what is common to the affecting body and the affected body. This can fail, but it can also succeed, and I become intelligent. He solicits us to form the idea of what is common to the affecting body and the affected body. So your body in relation to the matrix, both in a sense of the physical and this dimensional construct. Someone who becomes good in Latin at the same time that he becomes a lover. This is seen in the classroom. What's it connected to? How does someone make progress? One never makes progress on a homogeneous line. Something here makes us make progress down there, as if a small joy here had released a trigger. I knew the necessity of a map. What happened there that unblocked this here? Yeah, this is what I was saying before. This is helping me map the dimensional construct. A small joy precipitates us into a world of concrete ideas, which sweeps out the sad effects or which is in the process of struggling. All of this makes up part of the continuous variation. But at the same time, this joy propels us somehow beyond the continuous variation. It makes us acquire at least the potentiality of a common notion. It's necessary to conceive this very concretely. There are quite local things if you succeed in forming a common notion. At whatever point you yourself have a relation with such a person or such an animal, you say, I've finally understood something. I'm less stupid than yesterday. The I've understood that one says is sometimes the moment in which you formed a common notion. The epiphany. You formed it quite locally. It didn't give you all the common notions. Spinoza doesn't think at all like a rationalist. Among the rationalists, there is the world of reason, and there are the ideas. If you have one, obviously you have all of which changes. If you have one, obviously you have all of them. You are reasonable. Spinoza thinks that being reasonable or being wise is a problem of becoming, which changes in a singular fashion the contents of the concept of reason. It's necessary to know the encounters which agree with you. No one could ever say that it's good for him when something exceeds her power of being affected. The most beautiful thing is to live on the edges at the limit of his own power of being affected, on the condition that this be the joyful limit, since there is the limit of joy and the limit of sadness, but everything which exceeds your power of being affected is ugly. Relatively ugly. What's good for flies is not inevitably good for you. There's no longer any abstract notion. There isn't any formula which is good for man in general. What counts is what your power is for. Lawrence said a directly Spinozist thing. An intensity which exceeds your power of being affected is bad. Posthumous writings. It's inevitable. A blue that is too intense for my eyes will make me say it's beautiful. It will perhaps be beautiful for someone else. That's good for all, you tell me. Yes, because the powers of being affected are combined. I'm going to have to stop that there, eat, and come back. What page are we on? Page 11 here.